it's Scott from Hearns Racing. Today we're going to talk about how to do a setup on your 1/10 electric touring car. So we've got a BD9 here with the Arrowmax mid-mount conversion and everything on it. So we're going to go through how to just check to make sure the car isn't tweaked, setting your droop, ride height, and then obviously all your camber and toe. So let's get into it. So I use a solid board like this. This is a pre-made anti-tweak board. So basically, first up, position that. I always like to check the bottom of the car. As you see, they do get a little bit of scuffage on them from when you're running them around the track. It's also good to grab your 2mm driver and just go around every screw to make sure they're tight, and then even eyeball along and underneath, make sure there's no actual screws protruding, because when you try and take the tweak out, it might be rocking on a screw, which is going to never be totally flat for you. So basically go through every single screw, which I've already pre-done, and everything's looking really nice there. Next step is to put it on your board flat, and then you can do basically like your rock test. So basically it's just, I go by on the front towers or even just in there where the steering rack is. Same on the rear end, you can do the rock with the rear end, even just down on the chassis. Some guys even use the hex driver and actually tap the chassis, and they can actually hear if it's sitting up everywhere. So if your chassis is tweaked, the best thing to do is undo your 8 top deck screws like so. So we'll quickly run through that. So just holding the car, just crack them open so that they just relax. And if the car is tweaked, you'll actually see the top deck move and relax back into position. So it's always good to do this, especially after you've had a half decent hit on the track. Generally after every run, I'm always doing a full setup on the car. So as you can see, the top deck is floating. Then some guys have a tweak stick. It's like either a carbon rod or a piece of wood, and they can actually push down on the towers and all that. But generally the car should naturally relax. If you've had a major off, then you may have to undo your shock towers, front and rear, your bulkheads and everything. But this car is looking pretty good, so basically just let the car relax. I usually like to just hold the car to make sure it doesn't spin, and I do a crossover pattern when I'm doing these up. I actually don't do them up real mega tight, because that can actually move the top deck and tweak the car. So starting there, here, then I cross over to the other side. It's a little bit of my motor mechanicking days coming out when I'm putting heads back on cars. And then from this position back to the front opposite corner, and then same here, and then come back across to the back side, and then across to the other side, and your car should be nice and flat, no movement at all. That's perfectly de-tweaked, so that's looking pretty spot on. So your next step from here is to check your droop. So using your 10mm blocks, doesn't matter which manufacturer, Arrowmax, as long as you have them. I usually position them just at the back of the hinge pin carrier block at the front, and then just at the front of the rear front blocks. I try and not put them where the screws are, just in case the screw is got a little daggy edge coming out, and then it can actually make the car sit a bit uneven. So you can even check this by just, again, rocking the shock towers, and you can see that's perfectly flat. So then grabbing Arrowmax droop gauge, on the rear of the Yokomos, they actually have like a little drop down on the actual arm. So generally we go off there. You can sort of come in off to the side, but it is a little bit harder to read. So we're going off the mark number 2 here. So just sliding it under, and then you give it a little push. So there's a tiny bit of movement there. So just with your number 2, again, just in the droop screw adjuster, and then just a very minor movement. You can hear that cracking noise, and then just slide that back out, and then come back under. You can see that's perfectly just touching it. And then obviously we then go over onto the other side. So this one's out pretty majorly, so there's a fair bit of movement there. So again, into the droop adjustment screw, give that a little crack, just push down on them again, and you can see again that's now absolutely spot on. So that's dead even on both sides of the rear. Turn the car around. I always like getting down nice and low so that you can actually see the arm hitting on the actual droop gauge itself. So this one we're going off the Mark V, and then we're actually coming off, it's very hard to see if I flip this up, we're going to come off this front edge just here, okay? So it's a bit hard to see with the cameras, but that is where I'm measuring from. So again, just position the car back on the blocks, make sure it's sitting. Again, just push the arms down to make sure they're seating, and then just sliding your gauge in under the corner. If I push that, you can actually see the arm moving, so that needs a slight bit of adjusting. So 2mm Arrowmax hex driver again, just give it a little crack, slide the droop gauge out, little push. You can see that's still moving just a little bit, so let's adjust that a bit more. A little bit more there. Come under that corner, and that's now absolutely perfect. So do the same on the other side. Again, you can see there's a bit of movement there, so we need to adjust that one. Again, just push down, sliding back under, so it still needs a little bit more. And you don't have to turn that hex driver very far, because it's amazing how much it'll actually adjust. That needs just still a touch more, so let's go a little bit more. Give it another push down, and then that's spot on. So I've got no movement at all when I push down on there. So that's the droop set absolutely nicely. Your next step is to do your ride height. So I'll move the blocks out of the way. So grab your set of wheels, whack them on the car. I just use the setup station nuts because they're easy to get on and off. Whack your wheels on, like so. And that one. Alright, so it doesn't matter which end you start from. You can check your ride height from the rear first or the back. I like to sit the car down and then just give the suspension a bit of a push just on each end, just to get the suspension to settle. Using a ride height gauge, so we're using the RC Maker one here because it has the big platforms, but again, Arrowmax, whichever brand you got, as long as it's a good quality one. I then check the ride height at the lowest point at the front. So flipping the car over, when I bring the gauge in, I'm actually coming in under here. And then same on the rear, I sort of come in on the back, in onto about this area here. Sometimes the area here can be worn. That's where this gauge is good because it's got the big platform. So if you've got a bit of a worn edge, that actually comes through onto the chassis, which is pretty neat. So again, I've lifted the car, just push them down. Ride height gauge, so we're going to aim for 5.2mm ride height at the front. So just coming under, so you can see the gauge has slid past 5.2, sitting at about 5.4. So again, just check the other side. So that's at 5.4 as well. So just on your spring collars, you'll just go anti-clockwise, but only turn it probably 5 minutes, which is not much at all. Again, just push the car down a couple of times, let it settle, slide that in, and you can actually see that's now at 5.2 because the chassis is actually hitting on the step to 5.2 to 5.4. Check the other side, so that's absolutely spot on as well. So we've got 5.2 ride height at the front. Flip the car around, again, settle the suspension, and then we're going to go for 5.4 ride height on the rear. Again, slide your gauge under, so that's reasonably tight to get it under there. So we might just lift side. So we'll go clockwise here, but only a very small amount of adjustment. And just settle that back of the car down again. Slide the gauge under. So now that's hitting perfectly for 5.4. And then this side, we've got, it's probably just sneaking past, so we might just lower that one just a touch. And give it another check. And that's stopping perfectly at 5.4. Just check the other side. So both sides are perfectly at 5.4, so mission done there. So your next step from here is you're going to check the camber and everything. So you've got to take the wheels back off. Position these back out of the way over here. Like so. Again, you can set, a few people set their cars up different. They even take the front bumper and everything off. I don't feel like I've ever done that. Got little hands, so I can actually sneak around tiny little corners and that. So get your setup station on each wheel. I always like setting up the rear gauges this way, just so that when I turn the car around I can actually see it. Some people run them to the front, but yeah, it doesn't really make any difference at all. So whack the wheel nuts on. Again, so with the Arrowmax setup station, you've got your toe gauge as well. I also like to put that on the top. Give the suspension another push down, slide this across, and then you can actually position. I like to sort of, there's a little bit of always free movement here. Always pull them outwards a little bit so it's in the relaxed mode, and then slide that back across that way. So we're aiming for sort of like your 1 degree toe out on each side, so that's pretty good there. It also means that the wheels are dead straight as well. Some guys even turn their radio on and trim it to suit, but this is how I've always done it. Now you're going to set the actual camber on this car. So it's been ran around a bit, so we're going to aim for 2 degrees camber all around. So this front wheel here is a touch under 2. So if you've got good eyes, you can actually look at the thread pattern on your turnbuckle here, then you can actually work out which way you've actually got to go. So we've got to add a little bit more, so we need to turn the turnbuckle that way. Again, just very small movements. Always put the toe block back on. Make sure it's still sitting at that 1 degree there. Check down here. It probably needs just a touch more. Again, just small movements. Down there. And that's sitting perfectly at 2 on that side. So slide it back across. As we can see, that's sitting perfectly at 1. So this side we're sitting at 0.5 degrees camber. So we need to go the opposite way on this one. Give that one a good turn. Make sure that's still at that 1 degree. It needs just a touch more. Let's go a small turn. Check again, and there we are, right on 2 degrees perfectly there. So that means the camber on each wheel is perfectly at 2 degrees, and the toe out is at 1 degrees. Spin the car around. Again, just settle the car down. You can put this on. It's also good to just check your rear toe as well. Just see if you've got any worn components. Especially if you've got the RTC system on there, you can use this to then set your rear toe. But generally we don't need it for the rear setup. Again, push the rear. So this one's sitting a bit above 2. This one's a little bit under. So we'll adjust this side. There we go. So back that one off. A little bit too far. Check it. So that's perfectly at 2. And this one just needs a very small adjustment there. And that one's pretty spot on as well. So that gives you your 2 degrees camber all around the car. So that just means tyre wear will be even. There's a lot more adjustments that you can do with obviously spacers under your camber links and everything. But that just gives you a rundown on how to set the car up. I generally do this after every run on the track. Be it if I've hit a curb just slightly, another competitor's giving you a bit of a tap. It doesn't take much for the ball ends and that to actually slide in the cups, and it knocks everything out of whack, tyre wear. It's like just your normal big size car. So once you've got that all done, you're pretty much ready to whack your wheels back on and get back into some racing. Hope that's helped everyone with a bit of tips and knowledge on how to do a bit of a setup. So you just saw it didn't take very long, but it's definitely worthwhile doing. Yeah. Alright guys, we'll see you for the next episode of How to Tune Your Car. There you go.